And hello, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Hockey Writers Live, January 20th, 2021. I am your host, Mark Scheig, and got a wonderful show for you tonight here on a Wednesday night. It's going to be I'm going to call the all Pierre-Luc DuBois episode. So our first guest tonight has covered the Blue Jackets pretty much since they've gone into the league, from all the way to the beginning until now, going strong. He writes for The Athletic. He's a must follow. You can follow him on at Portzline on Twitter. Aaron Portzline, welcome to the Hockey Writers Live.
Well, thank you. Thanks there, Scheiger. How are you doing tonight? You good?
We're good. We're buried in about 16 inches of snow in Erie, but that's to be
Okay.
expected.
That's called springtime in Erie, right?
It's Tom Reed's weather, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. But Porty, how are you doing? How's your family doing? Everything's good?
Yeah, good. Good. Just kind of getting into the rhythm of a strange hockey season. It still feels a little bit like it's a continuation of last year.
Yeah.
Oddly, I know it isn't. I don't feel like things are going to truly feel normal until next season. I hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, off and running, and it's weird too, because this is supposed to be 20 years for the Blue Jackets, and it doesn't. I think because of the oddness of it, the fact that there are no fans in the building and may not be all season, it just doesn't feel like a celebratory year.
No, not at
So
all.
a lot of the stuff I was planning to do for the 20th year, I've decided to punt to the 25th year, just because I feel like it's going to be so disruptive. So
That's
anyway.
probably smart thinking on your part. And yeah, I mean, without the fans, without the fifth line, without the cannon, without all the things that you normally get a nationwide arena, it's just going to seem really, really strange and all that, like you said. So, Aaron, about how's life as a writer treated you in the Zoom world? Just how much of an adjustment has it been for you? How different has it been? And just how's that gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best we can do. I understand that, so I don't want to have a pity party here, but it's not. It just isn't the same. And I think coverage suffers. I think the readers were probably, if they had to compare what it's like in normal times versus what it is now, they would probably agree, the most astute among them. It's just players are uncomfortable. Some players are uncomfortable with the Zooms. It's more difficult to get your own information, build your own storylines. You can't have off the record conversations in a dressing room with players.
Right.
You can still have conversations with them on the side this way with reaching them in their private lives. But it isn't the same. And I mean, it feels a rather petty thing to complain about when you hold it up to all the other things that the world has had to do to adjust, the suffering that's occurred.
Yeah.
But it isn't the same,
Yep. No, 100% agree with all of that. Just to be in the room, because you get to obviously see a lot more things, you hear a lot more things, and you're right, it does, like this, you can still develop stories, but it just doesn't seem like that it goes to the in-depth that, let's face it, the fans who follow anything, these are real in-depth crazy hockey fans in a good way, and they really appreciate the in-depth stories. So I'm hoping for everybody's sake that people continue to do what they're supposed to do, do the hand washing, do the wearing of the mask, do the social distancing, because I feel like the more that happens, the quicker we can get back to normal, and everybody getting back to normal is just the best thing possible.
Yes. And let's organize and let's get that vaccine going.
Let's do it. I'm all for that. But tonight we're here to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Not that the whole hockey world is watching, but they are. And, you're right there in the middle of it all. So a couple questions along those lines for you. 4 games in, does he look like a distracted hockey player to you?
That's a really good question. And I try to look at it like this. If I didn't know this was going on, would I look at him and would I say to myself, something's up with Pierre-Luc Dubois? I don't think I would. I'm just being honest with you. And the reason for that is we've seen him. We all saw how he played in Toronto.
Yep.
against Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also seen times where he's not an impactful, clear number one center. He
Right.
looked like it in Toronto. That was a coming out party for many.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen those times where he looks like he's a dominating force in the National Hockey League, but we've also seen stretches where for a couple weeks, to borrow a phrase from John Tortorella's book of great sayings, you can't find him.
Yeah.
There are things he does on a hockey rink that are noticeable, even if he's not scoring. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to label him like that. He almost
Right.
always busts his ass. He's very confrontational. He's a impact checking, hard nosed centerman, but he has had ups and downs, highs and lows. So just being honest, I don't think I would look at him under normal circumstances and say, gee, something's wrong with him, because we've seen this before. But yeah, I think this has to affect him. The little that I know him, I won't pretend that I know the young man personally.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly can't break down his personality, but I do think that I think he's a sensitive kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think he cares. I think we learned about his sensitivity and how much he cares, how much he's motivated by what's out there and what is said about him at the draft. When he was drafted, the great people in the city of Buffalo could not believe he was drafted where he was drafted. He always remembers that moment, still uses it for motivation. He's not, you can't let him fool you into thinking that he doesn't have rabbit ears as to what's going on out there. He does.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he cares. I think it's only logical to assume that this is affecting him somehow.
Yeah.
And I'm not foolish enough to think that it's not affecting the team as a whole either.
That was my next question for you, actually, just kind of flipping it around. Does it seem like that some of his teammates, especially given the offensive struggles, do they look distracted?
Well, yeah, they do. It does, look, if you would have told me that at the start that through 4 games, Werenski, Jones, Atkinson would not have a point.
Exactly.
Foligno, Domi, Dubois would have 1 point. I would guess they had 1 win. So in a way, we shouldn't be surprised, right?
Right. Yep.
They'd have 1 or 0 wins. So this is what you get when those guys aren't going. Why aren't they going? This team does not look to me to have the abundance of passion that they play with when they're playing their best.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to the answer with Dubois. Have we seen him go through this before? We have. Has this team been through this before? Yeah. In fact, last year, right? The first couple of months of last year weren't exactly glorious hockey. Really wasn't until December that they took off.
Mm-hmm.
The year before that, it's easy to forget now. People want to talk about how well they handled the Bobrovsky and Panarin situation.
Mm-hmm.
That season was an absolute zombie walk for 70 games. It really wasn't until the last road trip way out west to Vancouver, right at the last one, but they were in Vancouver when they had a come to Jesus meeting, and that's when it really cleared up and they started playing again. Then they win a playoff series, so everybody thinks that season they did not handle that well at all for 70 games.
70 games, yep.
So a part of me as a reporter, I think you've got to be careful. We're not in the room. Even if you're in the room,
Mm-hmm.
these guys are not opening up their entire book of thoughts for you. You can do certain things from body language, sir, but I think you got to be careful with that too.
Yep.
We are not in the room. I will not jump to the conclusion and say that their spotty play is because of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I won't be naive enough, though, to think that if the number one center doesn't want to be here, you got problems. And I think I know that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I know you got problems.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that's going to be easy to deal with.
Not at all. Aaron Portzline joining us here on the Hockey Writers Live tonight. And continuing our discussion about the Columbus Blue Jackets and DuBois, and kind of thinking long term a little bit, right? The Panarin Bobrovsky happened, obviously. This year, DuBois, the situation is starting to play itself out
Yeah.
by the game. So I think long term, Jones is going to be up soon. Werenski's eventually going to be up. So there's going to be a part of me that says they have to try to appeal to keep some of their stars. But now they have this situation again. So question for you, Aaron, is can they afford to wait the entire season out, just knowing that this could hover over them? Like, can they afford to do that? Or do you feel like that they have to try and do something sooner, especially if the season starts to spiral out of control?
Well, that's a good question and a big question, and this is where a general manager earns his pay.
Yep.
Jarmo Kekalainen. So he's got a lot of things to weigh here. Look, this is a big season. I'm not saying forget about Jones, because you shouldn't. That's out there on the very, very near horizon.
Mm-hmm.
He can be extended as of July 1st.
Yes.
And that's going to be important. Werenski's somewhat in the same boat, but Werenski's an RFA. He is a UFA, Seth Jones. Seth Jones is going to be, if there's not already by then, he's going to be sort of the temperature of the franchise. How healthy is it here by his desire to sign?
Yeah.
But in the near term, you've got John Tortorella in what could be his final year as the Blue Jackets coach. You've got Nick Foligno in the final year of his contract. That's the captain. You've got David Savard, final year of his contract. You've got a goaltender you've got to move at some point, and you've got the number one center who is asked to be traded.
Yep.
If you're Jarmo Kekalainen, I think you have to measure this season and where this season goes on a day-to-day basis. And he knows what trades are available for him for DuBois right now. He knows what's available.
Yep.
At some point, he has to decide if this season is worth salvaging. I shouldn't say it that way, because we're 4 games in here. He has to decide if this season is going to be the season he wants it to be with DuBois. And when he makes the trade for DuBois,
Mm-hmm.
I think ideally he'd like to be in a situation where it's up to him to decide if the return on DuBois are today pieces, immediate roster help, a mixture of today and tomorrow pieces. We're not starting over, but we also keep an eye to the future, or fully tomorrow pieces, which would be probably on value the biggest return.
Yep.
I think that's going to be really, really difficult. He also has to weigh, what is Seth Jones making of all this? What is Werenski making of all this? And it's easy to say they're going to trade a goaltender and sign the other goaltender. My sense is going to be they're going to extend one of the goaltenders before they trade the other one, because the leverage gained by being, oh, you traded the other guy, and now I'm in my final year. Yes, let's talk about that extension, right? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to let me go? That's the play here. I would suggest that trade happens after July 1st. Another goalie is extended. The other one is traded. It probably should go in that pecking order. Yeah. There's a lot to juggle right now. How long does Jarmo Kekalainen allow this to go on? Mm-hmm. And before he decides that I need to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois now, best offer I can get in order to save this season? Or does he have to wait for the right trade? And I would find it hard to say this to the guys in the room, including John Tortorella, who again may be in his last year. But if he may have to decide to wait till the draft next year, and this season be damned. And that's a tough call.
You saying day by day seems to make a lot of sense, because one day it could feel one way, the next day, who knows, maybe they lose a couple more games, maybe they win a couple more games. It literally, It could change at any moment, which makes this so fascinating. Just got a couple more for you here, Aaron. About when DuBois is obviously one of the stars that they have on the team.
Yep.
So this might be a tough question to answer because I think ultimately every player is a unique situation. They have their own story, but is there something to the whole stars not wanting to play in Columbus? Like, is there an issue there, whether it's the city, whether it's the team, where stuff like this just seems to keep cropping up at the worst time?
So they have a reputation. I think they have it. Is it deserved or not? I think the one thing we can say is that the Columbus Blue Jackets have a talent retention problem.
Mm-hmm.
The tricky thing that everybody wants to have an answer to is the reason for it is X, right? It's
Right.
John Tortorella. It's the city. It's Jarmo Kekalainen's negotiation tactics. It's this, it's that. It would be easier to describe, to diagnose. It would be easier for the organization to fix if it were one thing. And it's not one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You go all the way back, to some of the players that wanted out. Daryl Sador wanted out, got traded to the Lightning, won the Stanley Cup. Blue Jackets got Svitov for him, not a great shake.
Huh.
Adam Foote
Oh.
never publicly requested a trade, but basically orchestrated his way out of town. The Blue Jackets 5 points out of the playoffs. Sador was left almost in a catatonic state by the losing and the hopelessness of the organization in the early days. So that would have been 03, 04. Adam Foote just wanted to go back to Colorado.
Right.
Left his team as captain, left his team 5 points out of the playoffs at the trade deadline. Rick Nash wanted to be traded. Nothing to do with Columbus. Nothing to do with the coach at the time. He didn't feel like he could win here, and he didn't want to be part of another rebuild. Those hadn't gone well.
Right.
We go on. Ryan Murray asked for a trade a couple of years ago. There have been others in between. I'm skipping ahead here because there are time restraints in this program. Jack Johnson requested a trade because he wasn't playing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's because he wasn't playing.
Right.
Artemi Panarin loved John Tortorella, loved him,
Mm-hmm.
did not want to leave Columbus because he didn't like John Tortorella at all. He didn't want to leave Columbus because he hated Columbus at all. He left Columbus as an unrestricted free agent, which was his right, because he wanted to play in New York freaking City.
Yes.
Nothing you can do about that. No shame on the organization.
Right.
Sergei Bobrovsky left because the Blue Jackets wouldn't make him the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
Right decision, I think we can say.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
And he didn't like the criticism, the fair, reasonable criticism, I would contend, from John Tortorella. We have no indication why Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to leave Columbus. Until we know what it is, I'm led to believe that he's got his own reasons for wanting to leave. So I guess what I'm saying is they have a problem in that players continually are asking for trades out of here. But it's not a singular problem. And so therefore, I'm not sure that it's a problem at all, if you know what I'm saying. Jack Johnson wanting out because he wasn't playing. I think there are trade requests, Mark, around the National Hockey League all the time that we don't catch wind of. Did Sonny Milano want to be traded? I think you would look at that one in a totally different light.
Yep.
Totally different light than you would this one. So, I think there are some things they need to be, as an organization, looking at extremely closely to make sure that they've got things where they want them to be, because whether they like it or not, whether it's fair or not, a reputation has formed about Columbus, Ohio, and the Blue Jackets, each or both of those things together, and they've got to fix it. But I've struggled to write this because, again, if there were a repeat reason for this, you could say, boom, this is what it is. Boom, here's who's to blame. and here's how you fix it. But each of them have been so different on their own merits that I'm not sure where you go with that.
Yeah, it's well said on all fronts because, yeah, every situation is truly unique, and you laid it out there perfectly. Um, yeah, it's yeah, who knows where all that goes. Kind of leads me to the next question I want to throw. So one thing I don't think that we hear about, because of the market, because they've made the playoffs for 4 straight years, looking for 5 this year. And with the defense, when they play the right way, and with the goaltending, they play the right way, they certainly have a chance in this division to do that. But we really don't hear Tortorella's name kind of being in hot water. We don't hear Jarmo Kekalainen's name being in hot water, but to date, Yarmo's only advanced past the first round once since he's been in Columbus. John Tortorella is in the same boat, but at least they've brought a level of sustained playoff success. At least getting to that point. They're obviously looking for more. Their goals are loftier than just making the playoffs. Are either of those gentlemen in any kind of hot water, especially if this season goes off the rails for any reason?
Well, if a season goes off the rails, an NHL coach is always in hot water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it is. I think whenever a coach is in the final year of his contract and a season goes off the rails, they're in really hot water because now it's easier to fire them than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Jarmo Kekalainen wants to get rid of John Tortorella. I think Jarmo Kekalainen has an incredible, and I'm not overusing that word or misusing it, incredible amount of respect for John Tortorella. He loves the man. There's some stuff that John Tortorella does that drives him crazy. The post-game blow-ups, which are fantastic at times.
Amazing.
You can understand a team official not being so fond of them.
Right.
But they have a very interesting relationship where, and I hope I say this the right way, no one misconstrues it, where they go toe to toe on things all the time. And they have, I don't know if I'd say FU sessions, but they go back and forth and they always end up in the same spot of mutual respect. I think Tortorella's idea of how you play hockey matches Jarmo Kekalainen's to a T. But yeah, I think it is only fair to say that if an NHL coach is in their final year and the team is seen to be underperforming, then yeah, that's a reasonable conclusion in the National Hockey League. I do think finances play a part in this, especially in a COVID year. That contract's guaranteed. So whenever a coach gets fired, they don't just stop getting paid. You'll be paying 2 coaches until the end of that term. So that's something to consider.
Absolutely.
As for Jarmo, I think people around the league are right to look at the Columbus situation to wonder why more wasn't done this summer, especially in the wake of Nyquist's injury. To beef up that lineup. I think it's pretty widely held that the Blue Jackets prospect pool, there are reasons for this, but it's not one of the best in the league right now.
Agree.
They're kind of in between. They've got Texier here. They've got Peak here. They've got Foodie here. But it's a young players league all over the place now. I don't think that's the excuse that there used to be. So I think, with the prospect pool not great, the possibility of this season not being great, at least not off to a very good start. We're still very early here, 52 games to go. I don't think it's reasonable to think that Jarmo Kekalainen will feel heat probably for the first time in his administration. I think you could look back in 15-16 when they got off to an 0-8 start, and there may have been considerations at that point, only 3 years into his time. Is this on the right path here? And then John Tortorella took over, and they've been a very competitive team ever since. But I think it's a little early for that yet, but this is the National Hockey League. It's almost inevitable at some point for both of those jobs.
Absolutely. Last question for you, Aaron. I think you hit it on the head with the season is still early. So fans look at this situation as, okay, now we're going to try and make the playoffs for the 5th year in a row. DuBois now has asked for a trade, even though it seemed like that internally this was known, but to the outside world, it kind of caught fans off guard. So like, oh, here we go again. Here we go again with a struggling power play with inconsistent offense.
Yeah.
Is the hope for this season just the fact that it is early and that everything is still fixable? It's definitely not too late. There's no doubt about that. But are the issues that we're seeing so far fixable?
Well, yeah. I mean, let me get the power play out of the way early. I'm not going to promise anybody that that's fixable. I mean, we have too long of a rap sheet here to say that's going to change.
Yep.
I won't be surprised if it is. I keep looking at the players and thinking it can't be this bad.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So, but I want no promises there. Look, Zach Werenski and Seth Jones know how to play hockey. They know how to produce.
Yep.
They're not going scoreless. So that's going to get better. I still think Cam Atkinson has a lot of game left in him. I know there's a lot of people down on Cam Atkinson. Mm-hmm. I still think there's a lot of game there. He's looked quick at times to me. I think the figuring out how to play with Max Domi has been as difficult as figuring how to play without Artemi Panarin was. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it's, we talk about how some players, Baker Mayfield's had 3 different offensive coordinators or 4, whatever, in 3 years. Cam Atkinson, not to make excuses for him, it's his job to produce. Mm-hmm. But he produced before Artemi Panarin. If you remember, it took him a while to learn how to play with Panarin.
Yeah.
And once he figured it out, he was golden. And then Panarin leaves, and he's got to figure out or re-remember, if you can do that, how to play without Artemi Panarin. And then I thought he started to get a little bit better. And then he screws up his ankle.
Yeah.
And now he's back to playing with a playmaker again in Domi. I think the one thing we can say about Cam, and this is by no means a slight, because if you score 41 goals in the National Hockey League, much respect.
Yep.
He does need help. He's not an individual contractor. This is not something that he does it himself. Very few people can.
Right.
And so he needs a line mate he can rely on, and he needs to know how he can rely on that line mate. Mm-hmm. And so there are some kinks right now with him and Domi, for sure. Mm-hmm. And they better be ironed out. I think he's had chances, Cam Atkinson. But I look, chances after a while are like zone time on the power play. It's great. It's wonderful. It's the first step. Score a damn goal. That's where it's at with the power play. Enough of the excuses. It's gone on way too long here.
Oh yeah.
They're 0-6, I think, on the power play. Maybe 0-8. 0-8.
0-8. Yep.
Yeah. But so here they are again, digging out from underwater, which is not where they want to be. But it is what it is.
It is
still extremely early. There's nothing like Tampa Bay to waken these guys up either.
That's it.
Let's be honest. I mean, we've been around too long to count anything out. And tomorrow night's game could be exactly what they need right now.
Yeah, that wake-up call, that energy, especially with no fans in the crowd, this could be the perfect tonic.
Called fear.
Yeah, because if they don't do well with these 2 games, all of a sudden, you're looking at 1-4-1 and in a short season.
Yeah.
That's tough to come back from. Aaron, thank you so much for this. Awesome as always. Fans, at Portzline on Twitter, make sure you follow him. I call him the gold standard in Blue Jackets Twitter and writing and everything, and there's a reason for that. He's the best. Aaron, thank you so much for all this. We really appreciate your time.
Well, you're too kind. Thanks, Mark. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Aaron Portzline with The Athletic.